Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with Steve Cohen. Our special guest today is Mr. Tom Dore. Tom, welcome to the show.
BC, always good to see you, my friend. It's been way too many years. Steve, good to meet you. This is great. I'm so glad you reached out, BC. I really am. It's been forever.
Yeah, it has been a little while. But you know what I'm always curious about, because we know our friends, but we don't really know them. Can you tell me about where you grew up? And I want to know about your mom and dad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, grew up in Chicago, played basketball, went to fairly big school, very Italian school. So my teammates were Gargula, Medi, De Benedetto, Schwacke. There were a lot of vowels in there. And in our city, you could leave your door open at night. You did not spit on the sidewalk. You did not disrespect anybody. You guys get the idea. That's the kind of city I grew up in. It's called Franklin Park, much different now, but it was a great place to grow up. Had a terrific high school coach, played against BC a couple times in a couple All-American games. And then I had surgery on my ankle, and that really ended any chance I had of ever playing pro basketball. They cut tendons, they cut muscles, and they didn't sew them back together. I've had surgery since then to try and fix all that, just so I can walk and that kind of thing. But that ended any chance of a career. Went to Davidson College for a year. Then I went to the University of Missouri for 4 years, graduated from Mizzou. Larry Drew played in the NBA, teammates, Steve Stepanovich, John Sunvold, all those guys were my teammates. The question is always, what was the name of that big white stiff? Who was the fifth guy on that team? What was that idiot's name? And, I'm the answer to a great trivia question in Missouri. Then I played pro basketball in France for a year, played in New Zealand for 2 years, and I was offered the chance to stay there and become their national team coach and the coach for the country. They really didn't know anything about basketball. BC, if it tells you anything, they thought I was smart with basketball. So, that's how bad they were. They've come a long way since then. I almost stayed, but instead, my wife and I, Cheryl and I, came back, went to a little tiny radio station in Miami, and did high school football, basketball, baseball, college basketball at FIU, college basketball and college baseball. Stayed there a year. Then I came to Austin for 5 years and did University of Texas football, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, did a talk show. If they kicked it, through it, whatever, I was there. And then I did the talk show at night. And then my old coach, Norm Stewart, called me. I went back to Missouri for 2 years to do football and basketball, do a talk show at night. You guys remember the old football player, Conrad Dobler, the
Of
dirtiest
course.
player in the NFL? So Connie and I were partners on the show. And I got a great Conrad Dobler story. You guys will like this. I promise it won't take too long. Connie and I are doing the show on KCMO, Kansas City, Missouri. KCMO is the radio station. And Conrad thought Bo Jackson was a great football player, and he was terrific running back, and an average to partly cloudy baseball player. So Conrad would rail on him continually on the talk show. Bo would listen on the way in. George Brett and I got to be buddies. And so George would be like, hey, dude, don't bring Connie into the locker room because he and Bo are going to go at it. And I said, George, you don't know Conrad. He's not afraid of anybody. If there was a herd of buffalo running at him, he'd be like, okay, bring it on, bring it on. We walk into the locker room, into their baseball locker room, and George Brett is just to my left. So I go over and talk to George for a minute. And Bo Jackson says, he stuttered and he said, all right, MF, get your hands up, let's go. Guys were diving to get out of the locker room. Pitchers, catchers, infield, everybody wanted out. And Conrad handed me his bag and said, Bring it on. Let's go. Bo Jackson and Conrad Dobler were going. I mean, it was going down. George Brett got in the middle of it and said, Bo, just go sit down. Conrad, get out. What the hell is wrong with you? We almost had a hell of a story in Kansas City because Connie wouldn't back down. Literally, a herd of buffalo, this is what I used to say, could be running to him. He'd be like, come on, I got you guys, one at a time or all of you. That was Conrad. So anyway, great Bo Jackson, Conrad Dobler.
Why was he so fearless, do you think? Is he crazy or?
Well, I mean, even when we worked together, we were both probably in our 40s, and he was, I mean, a monster. Not quite what he was when he played, but he still lifted. His arms were huge chest, huge ego too. But if he and Bo Jackson had gone at it, I'm not sure who I'd have picked. And Bo, quicker, stronger, faster, but Conrad was just a beast. And that's what I called him, a beast. But anyway, so then I was in Kansas City for 2 years doing University of Missouri, and the Bulls called and asked if I could do 3, 4, 5 games as a radio backup. And, because their main guy was going to do the White Sox. When they were on WGN, the big station, the super station, they wouldn't do a simulcast. They do a radio broadcast and a TV broadcast. Normally, it was just one broadcast, one simulcast, Jim Durham, JD, and Red Kerr. And so they said, we got these 5 games. This guy's going to do the White Sox. Can you fill in? Well, Missouri was on probation. They weren't going to the NCAA tournament. So I said, hell yeah, I'll do it. And so my first game, and I talked to BC. We had a great conversation on the way to the game. Michael sat right behind me. BC sat right next to me. It was like old home week with BC. And so was at Detroit. This is the year the Bulls beat the Pistons in the playoffs. And that was a bloodbath of the game. Scott May got tossed. It was awesome game, and the Bulls won. And so then I did a game in New Jersey, a game in Miami, a couple other games. And so then there was an opening that summer because JD left. So they had a radio opening and a TV opening. My buddy was Kevin Harlan, also from Kansas City, and now CBS, big star with CBS. Kevin came up and interviewed for the job, and he said, hey, they really love you. Can I use you as a reference? And I said, yeah, go ahead for the TV job. So Kevin, it's the day Kevin's going up there. The phone rings, and my wife said, hey, it's this guy, John Toohey from Sports Channel Chicago. So I answered the phone. Hey, John, I know why you're calling. I didn't give him a chance to say hello. John, I know why you're calling. Kevin's a terrific guy. He'll be positive. He'll do everything you want. So he says, well, Kevin just left and he's not going to get the job. And I kind of tilted my head like, what? And I said, okay, I'll bite. Why the hell are you calling me? And he said, well, we wondered if you would be interested in applying for the job. Now, there were 3 known candidates in this mystery candidate for the TV job. And my mom would get, you asked about my mom, BC, and I know I've talked for about 35 minutes now. I'm sorry. But my mom would get the Tribune every day and read it. And so she'd say, oh, they said this about this mystery candidate. And each time I'd think, it's kind of me, And so when this guy said, would you be interested in applying for the job? The honest answer, and I'm sorry, this is probably a G-rated show. My honest answer was, you got to be shitting me. That's exactly what I said. So I said, yes, obviously. I come up and I interview for the job. And across the way, there's Jerry Reinsdorf, there's Jim Corner, there's all these guys. All the big shots are there. And they're ready to start. And I said, hold it. You guys, I want you to know who I am, because I don't think I'm who you think I am. I've never done TV. I don't know jack about the NBA. I'm a college guy. Now, I'm a basketball player, so I can learn what you guys are doing, but I am truly a fish out of water. So the interview finishes and it's a sell job, a total sell job. They wanted me to take the job. I walk outside, and at the corner there's a payphone. I put the quarter in, dial my wife, and say, start packing. We're moving to Chicago. 3 months later, 2 months later, they call me and I take the job. And so I was there for 17 years with the Bulls as one of their 2 TV play-by-play guys. You asked about mom and dad. Dad was a plumber, grew up in Chicago, fought in World War II under Patton, and had Patton in his truck a couple times. Jimmy, take me over here. I want to go. And we'd watch the Patton movie, and he'd narrate the Patton movie for me. My mom was a comptroller for an office supply company and just died a year and a half ago. Mom made it to 96. So
Wow.
I got that going for me. But she was my biggest fan. She was terrific. She'd put up with all my rantings and all. As you guys can see, I've been talking for now 35 minutes or so. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We still got Steve. You can't beat him. Hey, Tom, tell me about, I was really fortunate when I was a kid. I had great mentors. Give me a great high school mentor and a great college mentor you had when you were growing up.
I'll even go one better. My grade school coach was a guy that I absolutely loved.
Wow.
He was unbelievable. My 8th grade year, we were 58-4. We were as a Catholic school, so we played every night, and then twice on Sunday. That old thing, doubleheader on Sunday. We did that. I had no idea. I was meek, mild, quiet. I'd never talked to anybody. And so he put me in this practice and he'd push me and do all kinds of things. He taught me about teamwork. He taught me about toughness. I didn't know any of that. I was, BC, you know what it was like. I was 6'7" and 135 pounds in 8th grade. You had the same thing, BC. I know you did, Yeah, exactly. So a strong wind and we're going down. My high school, I started 2 years at a school called West Leiden in North Lake. And I loved my teammates, but my coach had no idea what to do. Our state tournament game, we lost the first game. We were like 18th ranked or something like that my sophomore year. I averaged 28 or 29 points a game. But the school put a kid in front of me and a kid behind me. And the story the next day in the paper is the one that really clinched it. It said West Leiden had 7 coaches on their bench. And then in bold in parentheses, 7 of them, and none of them could figure out how to get the ball to Tom Dore. We moved that summer to the school that stopped me, and that was Norm Goodman. Norm Goodman was one of those legendary high school coaches. And we had another player, in fact, several players in a row that were recruited. The other kid on my team was better than me. His name was Glenn Grunwald. He was 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year. Glenn went to Indiana, was part of their national championship team. I tell you how good Glenn was. We were playing against DePaul with Dave Corzine and Andy Pancrantz and Gary Garland and all those guys that made 2 great NCAA tournament runs. And we were beating them, but it was Glenn. I played my part, but Glenn was just head and shoulders. Larry Bird. That's who he was, only more athletic. He was that good. We're playing DePaul. I throw him an outlet pass. He goes up, dunks it, lands, and his career was over. He twisted that knee just the wrong way. They did the surgery. This was before they knew to wait until all the swelling was down or you'd infect the knee. So he had the surgery right away. The knee got infected and he was never the same. But he went to Indiana. You guys know him. I promise you. He was the general manager of the Toronto Raptors. He drafted Vince Carter. He drafted Tracy McGrady. Steve, He was then the assistant general manager of the Knicks, became general manager of the Knicks, and really cleaned up Isaiah's mess. And then they decided to hire Phil Jackson instead and let go of Glenn. Glenn really had it going in Toronto, would have had it going with the Knicks, but the guy that runs the show there decided.
Stay in touch with him.
Yeah, oh yeah, I talked to Glenn. He's an assistant or something like that with Memphis, and he's terrific scout. My God, is he good? He's one of the best I've seen. BC, you remember Clarence Gaines from the Bulls,
Of
and then
course.
the Knicks? Yeah, terrific scout. These two, to me, are among the best all time at that kind of thing. Just guys that could watch a team and say, it's that guy. You'd say, no, and they'd say, no, you're not listening to me. It's this guy. And just that good.
So you talked about going to the Bulls and not really knowing anything about TV or anything. So how did you learn? And what was it like to be with, the tallest, the tallest twin towers of all time? You got to at least note that.
Yeah, exactly. Me and Red. Red was 6'10". And then Billy Wennington did sideline for us for a year.
Awesome.
So it
Wow.
was me at 7'2", Red at 6'10", and Billy at 7 foot. It was awesome. My first day there, Red had worked with 18 years with Jim Durham, JD, and they did everything together. Red and I sat down at lunch, just he and we started talking. We both love to play golf. We both love to go fishing. It went right down the line of all the things we wanted to go do together. We'd go on the road and we'd bitch, if it wasn't for these damn games, we'd have a blast on all these road trips. Because we literally, BC, you'd see us all the time fishing. You'd see us playing golf. We were in San Francisco one time, and we go to Fisherman's Wharf, and there's one of those mimes, okay? The guy's all in silver, and Johnny thought for all the world that it was a real statue. And it was me and Neil Funk and Bill Wayne. We had the whole group. Johnny gets up face to face with the guy because he really thought it was a statue. And the guy says, boo. Honest to God, if Red could have jumped that high when he played in the NBA, he'd average 25 a game. And then he was 75 years old or whatever he was at the time. I loved Red Kerr. Every day we were on the road, we'd go get breakfast together, we'd get lunch together, we'd get dinner together. We'd meet we did everything together, absolutely everything. We never had a bad day on the road. Never. We had a blast.
You talk about, and this is going to be a little tough, give me the 2 best games you ever called.
Okay, you guys against the Knicks, the JoJo English fight game where it goes into the NBC crew on the other side. So Marv Albert and whoever was with Marv. But those Knicks series were so good. But I tell you, the second one is one you guys lost that you should have won. It's the Hugh Hollins game. You guys, in a brutal call, an absolutely brutal call by Hugh Hollins. You guys against the Knicks in the Garden, you've got them. This game is done because the shot is missed. The shot's like 3/4 of the way, and then Scotty hits him on the wrist. But it's the shot is way over. But that year, to me, Scotty Pip might have been the best player in the NBA. He was consistently good. He was a leader, defense, offense, sharing the ball. He did everything. He did it in practice. He came every single day. But that game in New York that you guys should have won and then would have gone on to play Indiana in the Eastern Conference finals. But there were so many great games. The 53-point game in New York when Michael was so pissed because the tabloids all wrote about him going to the casino the night before. That was, to me, that was one of the best parts. he'd walk right by me occasionally. Again, a game against the Knicks late in the season, and he had like 18 or 19, and he needed like 40 something to clinch the scoring championship. So he's right in front of me, and so I break in and say, "Oh, I just don't see it this year for Michael with the scoring title. He's got no chance. He's only got 18 or 9." So the whole time he's walking back, BC, you know what this is like. His whole focus now is on me. And he's looking at me and he's listening to me, and you can see the steam starting to come out of his ears. You rotten son. So he goes out and gets like the first 15 points of the fourth. And every time he'd run down the floor, he'd like either look at me or point at me. You stupid, so those things, talking to you on the bus on the way there, on the way home, going to lunch with Johnny, it was a great gig. And then everybody graduated, like Tim Floyd said, and it was, oh my God, what the hell is going on out there? And then you came back as a coach, which was great. And then that didn't last for very long. Do you think, BC, the voice was a lot of that they couldn't hear you? You think that was part of that?
No, I think that a couple of things happened. We had the youngest team in the league, and my boss,
you didn't have much talent. Yeah,
and my boss got fired. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Right.
So once that happened, it's like, let's see, I got a new boss. What does that mean? So look, my time at the Bulls was great. I enjoyed it. Everybody doesn't get that opportunity. That's how I viewed it. And regardless of what happened, I ended up coaching for 16 years in something that I had not even intended to do. So it's because of Jerry Krause I ended up coaching. So it was just a great it was a great experience.
Yeah, and I got along great with Krause too. I know a lot of people didn't like him. He was always very good to me. He said he sat me down with Phil day one. And they said, you can come to any practice. You can't come to the meetings, but you can come to any practice. You can be at shoot around, anything you want. You want to ask questions after practice, come up to the office, do whatever you want to do. You have unfettered access except the meetings. You can't come to those. And so I was there a lot and learned a lot from Phil. And then I'd start coaching an AAU team. And so I'd use a lot of the drills that you guys did on the kids, and it didn't go so well at times, but that's the way it goes.
I want to know about a little bit more about Jerry Krause. And I mean, I think that's always been very interesting. He's a compelling figure in The Last Dance. A lot of people feel like he didn't get a fair shake because he wasn't around to defend himself. So I want to know a little bit more about what type of person Jerry was, why he was successful. Why didn't he and Phil Jackson get along?
Jerry wanted the adulation. He wanted to be loved. More than anything else, he wanted that love. And Phil wasn't going to let that happen. Look, Jerry was terrific at what he did. But he wanted, when he walked out to get his ring, he wanted that thunderous standing ovation. And it just wasn't going to happen. He wasn't a guy that got that. He was a little inappropriate with the things he said and did. But he was terrific to me. Absolutely terrific to me. But right away, and BC, I'm sure you'd say the same thing. You could see the acrimony between Phil and Michael and Scotty and Jerry. They didn't like him because he wanted that spotlight. And they were like, you don't play. You're only the GM. And so in part, I think there's no doubt Jerry should have been more appreciated for what he did. He was a hell of a baseball scout. I mean, really good. That's probably what he and I talk about more than anything, or fishing once he took up fishing. But I got along great with Jerry. I never had a problem with him. And but you knew what was going on. And that last year, when he said, no matter what happens, Phil's not coming back. He could go 82-0 and Phil's not coming back. And you just think, oh, no, you didn't say that. And then I'll give Jerry Reinsdorf credit. At the end, he went to Phil and said, what will it take? Just tell me a number. What will it take for you and everybody to come back? And Phil said, there is no number. I'm not coming back. No matter what, I'm not coming back. And so you realized, okay, it's over. And I was at the Berto Center doing, I think it was the Berto Center, whatever it was. I was doing something, a show with somebody, and somebody came over and told me, yeah, it's done. They're not coming back. You're going to see a couple of guys walk out now for the last time. And it was Phil and a couple other guys. And Phil said, hey, come here. Gave me a handshake. And he said, hey, you're terrific. Thank you. And then walked out and it was over. It was done.
You think that's common? You know, like musicians have a hard time staying together because of egos and.
Yeah, I did. Clearly, bands have trouble. Look at the Beatles. You know, I mean, they're king of the world. They could make millions and millions every year, just withstand each other, and it couldn't happen. And so many other bands, but even in pro sports, you see it. Pro coaches are fired, general managers are fired, and people are doing a good job. But with coaches, a lot of times you'll hear the players got tired of their message. People didn't get tired of Phil Jackson. They didn't get tired of Jerry Sloan. And there are a few other people that you just say, no, that's not quite it. But for whatever reason, it ended, and it was over. And then it was like BC said, oh my God, what the hell's going on out there? You know, that first year was. Johnny and I went to a preseason game in Rockford. So we go up to Rockford and we come back from Rockford. We're coming back from Rockford and he's like, we may not win 4 games. Oh, Lord. But I think that was the lockout year. So I think they won 4 games, but they only played like 55 or whatever it was. But yeah, it was a trip. You know, as Billy could tell you, every time we'd go into a city, it could be 4:00 in the morning in Miami after a game. We always went to Miami the night after a home game, always. So we'd get in there at 4:00 in the morning, and there are 250 people standing out there. A lot of girls in like bikini tops, and guys with their pens and that kind of thing. And you think, it's 4:00 in the morning. You know, we're just trying to walk in a straight line, but it was what it was.
Yeah, I didn't see the bikinis.
No, we were bleary-eyed. You and I are bleary-eyed, and they didn't care about us anyway. But yeah, it was especially, and I'll say this, especially once Dennis joined the joined the group. Dennis comes in, and it was unbelievable. Not every day, but a lot of days. You know, like the day Michael had to go get him at home. You know, they're both sitting, he and Carmen Electra are naked playing cards at his kitchen table or dining room table, whatever it was. Michael comes, knocks on the door. Carmen dives behind the couch. Dennis answers the door. I think he put a robe on, but the robe was open. So Michael comes back to the Berto Center and he said, there are things I can't unsee. But, you know, it's like, dude, you got to come back to work. You know, vacation's over. You got to come back. It was forever an interesting experience with Dennis. Unbelievable.
Yes, it was always a special time. Hey, Tom, talk about what you're doing now.
When the Bulls fired me, I was coming down to Austin to run what was then the Texas Channel, now as the Longhorn Network. So I'm in Oklahoma City with the moving van right behind me. I'm in one car with a couple of kids. My wife's in the other car. And we're driving down to Austin. I was the athletic director, DeLoss Dodds, had talked to me about being like the number 2 guy at the Texas Channel. And he said, you're going to have to help us with programming. You're going to have to find things for us to cover. But we'll talk about it. So I'm in Oklahoma City driving down, and my phone rings. And it's DeLoss Dodds, the athletic director of Texas. He says, Tommy, I got a problem. I said, DeLoss, I'm here to help. What can I do? He said, well, ESPN just gave me $64 million. And I said, DeLoss, I'm with you. That's a real problem. And he said, here's kind of where we're going. They now own the entire network, and I don't have a job for you. And I said, DeLoss, for $64 million, I think you could find something for me to do. I'll be like your liaison. I'll be your eavesdropper. I need a job. I need something. I get there, there's no job. So I bought into a biodiesel plant in Austin. I knew nothing. I mean, less than nothing about it. Bought into a biodiesel plant. But the one thing I always did, somebody was going out to hand out the ball or give the referee or do something, I'd always go talk to them. So I met the head of Shell. I met the head of Marathon. Met the head of Valero. All these refinery groups. I met the main guy. And so the guy at Valero said, here, if you're ever back in Texas, call me and we'll go out to lunch or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, I bought into this biodiesel plant. I had to call this guy. He says, come on down. I met with about 4 or 5 of their experts. They come out, and now they're buying everything we make. So it was great. Then they were coal guys. My partners were in coal. And so the bottom dropped out of coal. Nobody's using coal. So I bought the plant, and then I ran it for a while, and then I sold it. I didn't know what I was doing. About a week and a half later, they added another $1 a gallon incentive. The guy that bought it from me is still making money hand over fist. Every time he sees me, he wants to shake my hand. And every time I say, anyway, so now I'm with a startup with about 4 of the former Valero guys, and we're going to do the next generation of biodiesel. It's called renewable diesel, and great group of guys. I literally, when they're talking, I walk in, I'm Penny from the Big Bang Theory. I have no clue what they're talking about. I'm checking Facebook. I'm looking at my emails. I'm looking at the baseball scores. I'm doing whatever I can do because I have no clue what they're talking about. And I'm the CEO of the company. How scary is that? But it's just, they didn't want the job. So I deal with all the cities and the refineries and all that stuff. So we're in money raising for that right now. And it's a blast. Absolutely a blast.
Bill wouldn't exactly be Sheldon.
Yes, thank you for that insight, Steve. Hey, Tom, talk about your family.
So for some reason, Cheryl and I are still married after 40 years. My friends, all my buddies from high school and college, gave it 2 years. That was the over/under. So I'm getting married. All my buddies are out there betting on how long the wedding is going during the wedding. They're all putting money into this envelope, and they gave it to my wife's sister, the twin sister. I think there was like $500 in there by the time it ended. But there were a couple NBA players. So anyway, she and I are still married after 40 years. We've kind of semi-retired back to Austin, but I'm in this startup. And then 3 kids. The oldest is Allison, who used to come in and bother you all the time. When you were shooting or in the locker room or whatever, she would always be running around. She now is one of the heads of a group, and I don't know exactly what it is, but they design websites and they fix websites, that kind of thing. She's doing awesome. Second daughter is Annie. Annie's doing the same thing at another company and doing great. My son, Tommy, is at the University of Texas, and he's a triple major. math, linguistics, and physics. So BC, he takes after me, right? Yeah, not really. And he's brilliant. He's very personable. He's kind of a combination of me and Cheryl because she's brilliant and I might not be. There's just that chance that I'm not the brilliant one of the group. But that's the three kids. They're doing great, BC. No grandkids yet. I'm ready, but no grandkids yet.
No worries about that. When they're there, they're there. They're not going anywhere. But Tom, thank you so much for being on. I've really, really enjoyed it. We have got to get together at one point in time when all this is over.
Absolutely. BC, I've said this before, playing against you in high school and then getting to know you again with the Bulls. You were a class guy and a great friend, and I'd love to see you again. Steve, if I come to New York, we can go to a Mets game, right? We can sit in the box and I can get introduced to all the players, all that stuff, right?
Just make sure Steve buys something when you're there.